Great. Hello, everyone, and welcome today. Thank you for taking the time to join us this afternoon as we talk through your school's pivot to a virtual fundraising event. I'm Kelsey Woodworth, the Content Marketing Manager here at GiveSmart, and we have heard from so many of our school partners over the last month or so with concerns over what to do next during this new normal that we are finding ourselves in. So specifically, we've had a lot of requests about how to shift a portion of your fundraising from in-person to online. We know how critical these in-person events have been for your schools hitting their goals for the year. So we're going to touch on that definitely today. And joining me, I have my colleagues, Diane Kleber, the VP of Sales for GiveSmart and an industry veteran herself, who's helped countless organizations as well as her children's schools achieve their fundraising goals. And we have Kirsten Promozic, who helps onboard all of our clients so that they are set up for fundraising success. And she is on the board for her children's PTO as well. So ladies, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you, Kelsey. Looking forward to it.
Cool. So just a quick high level before we get started. We have more resources for fundraising than we could really cover in 45 minutes. So we'll be posting those throughout the chat section as we go through. We'll also be including any of the resources that we referenced today in a follow-up email this evening. We have plenty of stories from schools who've already run virtual campaigns and seen great success. So do keep an eye out for that when this webinar is over. And the chat is open, so please send us any questions that you have, and we will address them during Q&A at the end. This is also being recorded, so we will send that out in the follow-up email as well. So, okay, before we dig in, let's jump into a quick poll. And while everyone is weighing in, Kirsten, could you just kind of give us a quick lowdown of what is happening with your children's schools and what you're seeing in schools in your area?
Yeah, absolutely, Kelsey. So both in my role here at GiveSmart and as well as my role as the activity coordinator on the PTO at my children's school, there are a slew of questions that we are seeing coming from school boards, development directors, and even parent volunteers who are asking. Questions ranging anywhere on the spectrum from end of year gifts, voting for new board members, of course, very important there, how to sell remaining school spiritware, and even, how to raise funds from all these auction items that we may have sitting around our houses from canceled galas. So one of the main things that we've been hearing a lot of questions about also are teacher appreciation weeks and teacher appreciation. I know at our school, teacher appreciation is very important, and I'm sure it is at yours as well. So how can we still show the love for those teachers, because they play such an integral part in our children's lives, and right now they probably still are through e-learning, and there's just so many questions from so many different areas.
Yeah, thanks, Kirsten. And that's why we're here today. So hopefully we can answer some of these questions. So let's take a look at the poll results. What is your fundraising state of mind? So it looks like definitely the majority of you are, okay, we need funds now. Our fiscal year is ending soon, whether that's June or July, but that's coming up. It looks like quarter have pushed off to the fall, quarter are about not sure, and almost very, very few of you are tabling fundraising altogether for the foreseeable future. So that is good news in a sense. You can keep moving your missions forward. And yeah, Diane, what do you make of these poll results?
That's interesting, very interesting, because when the COVID virus first started impacting events and impacting fundraising a little over a month ago, at first everybody was like, hey, we are just holding off. We just need to see what's going on. We saw that, or we saw, oh my goodness, I had a gala or some kind of a fundraising event scheduled for this weekend. Help me, make it work. So it's interesting how that's shifted in the last week or two, because all of a sudden now everybody, whether it's a school or other nonprofit, is looking at the world and going, okay, we need funds now. So what we see here on this poll, this is actually representative of what we're seeing overall across the country in the last week or two, but it has shifted from what we were seeing before. So this is really quite interesting. But that really ties in nicely to what we're going to talk about today. So let's get into our agenda.
Yeah, great.
Okay, so today we are going to talk about the art of the possible, and that's really all around how can you raise dollars this fiscal year and help have fundraising success even with all this going on. A lot of questions lately about a virtual event or virtual campaign, so we're going to spend a lot of time talking about that. Touch on, how we can be fundraising year round. I know that schools are usually really good about having a number of different ways that you may be raising funds. So where some schools really focus on one major event. So let's talk about that year round. And then of course we'll have time for Q&A. All right. So we thought we'd start with just a little bit of some data for you here to help you feel better. Since January 1st, okay, so this is since the start of the year, GiveSmart has helped run over, exactly 829 school fundraising campaigns. Okay, that's just since the top of the year. And that was for 658 schools, and we have helped those schools raise $62 million thus far in 2020. So that's really, really phenomenal. And, with a number of weeks under our belt since COVID-19, started to impact us, we've seen a lot of schools actually outperforming their previous year fundraising. They've not just met their goals, but they've exceeded their goals, and helping them, to really move forward with their fundraising. The one thing I want to point out, though, is this concept of virtual fundraising isn't really new at all. Like in 2019, at GiveSmart, we ran 2,879 campaigns and raised over $33 million through virtual and online campaigns. So, that's why one of the reasons why we wanted to gather today and share some of the best practices we've seen over time, as well as some of the fun and innovative ideas that have come up over the past month or so related to successful online fundraising. So we're super excited to get into it.
Yeah, definitely. Those numbers do at least show, success definitely is happening. And so as we just talked about with the poll, most of everyone on here today, they're looking to refocus fundraising because it's needed in the next couple of months, but there are also some delaying, and then there are some who are just not sure. So Diane, what are some of the things to consider, for those on the call who are still in this not so sure space?
Yeah, the poll really did, like I said, represent what we've been hearing from all of our charity partners across the country the last few weeks. And there's so many unknowns certainly out there, but as you all indicated, needing to raise funds, right? So that's actually, it is kind of funny, I was actually thinking as we were coming into this day, that an interesting little tidbit for all of you is I actually came to GiveSmart. I was a customer first before I was employed with the company, and I was the co-chair of a large chef event. It was a fundraising event for my daughter's independent high school, and our event was in May, and it raised a lot of dollars for our scholarship program and our special programs. And thinking back, if I was in the situation many of you are or have been in over these last few weeks, I would be asking myself a lot of questions. And you already answered in the poll one of the questions, and the biggest question I think is, are donations needed today? And many schools do rely on those fundraising funds for a big part of what's needed within the fiscal year. So, with my personal example that I mentioned, without those dollars coming in from that fundraiser that I was helping co-chair, we would not have been able to provide the scholarships that we normally would in the fall. So it was critically important that money was raised. So yeah, if the answer to fundraising now is yes, which for 40% of you it was, then a virtual event or campaign in the upcoming month or two may be a really good idea or even necessary. But if the answer is no, like some folks do have the ability to say, no, we're going to postpone, we're going to wait until the fall, then maybe you can do some different things. But it doesn't matter where you are in that decision. There's a few key questions to consider. If you had that event that you had to cancel or postpone, did you send your invites out already and start receiving RSVP or ticket payments? And so if the answer is yes, one thing that we're seeing with a lot of success is, saying, hey, we're going to, they kind of make the assumption that we're going to keep this as a donation. Please let us know if you would prefer for us to refund your money. And so for those of you that maybe still have some outstanding ticket sales out there, they are converting to donations very nicely for a lot of organizations, right? But if you're postponing your event and you're kind of doing things down the road, do you want to capture donations now, even though you might still have an event at a later date? And so you can always, we're going to talk to you about the numerous ways you can run some kind of a donation campaign in that upcoming month, or even on your event date. Let's say you're one of those folks that had a May event planned, still have something going on related to fundraising at that time. And then the other question that's good to ask for those of you that did have an event planned is, do we have items? Kirsten mentioned this at the top of the call. Do we have items that we can't hold until fall? Do we have some of those auction items? So if you do, an online silent auction could be a really, really good idea. And so schools have the wonderful opportunity to have unique auction items anyway. So we would say, even if you don't have items, come up with some of the unique items that we're going to talk more about in a few minutes, and do something like that right now.
Yeah, those are really great questions to consider, Diane. And so the big question, that we have been getting is, what is virtual fundraising and how do we do it? So Kirsten, over to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Kelsey. Based on our experience and what we've been seeing and hearing from our organizations out there, that even like Diane said, even though it's not a new term, it's gaining a lot of traction, and that term being just virtual fundraising. So virtual fundraising, there's two distinct types of events that kind of fit this term. And the first being the extended virtual fundraising campaign. This is the very typical, the very standard when people think of an online event or online campaign. And the second one being, which is trending now in a big way, is the live virtual event, with actually many of our organizations running a hybrid and making a combination of these.
Yeah, that's great. So let's dig into both of these, and first the extended virtual fundraising campaign.
Yeah, so the extended virtual fundraising campaign, like I mentioned, is the more typical approach. It's a great way to engage your donors from wherever you are to wherever they are. In this day and age, we can't all get together. So, it's great that your donors can be at home in the comfort of their own pajamas, maybe, and you're at your home as well, and that you're still able to raise and fundraise and have a successful virtual event. So what the GiveSmart platform allows you to do is stay in communication with your donors via various ways. So we have email and texting engines, and then we even have social media buttons, which are very convenient. So the way you would start is you would be able to start engaging your donors via an email invitation or a web link. And maybe you're one of those organizations that already has a CRM, and you're able to upload your list of donors with their mobile numbers straight into the GiveSmart platform. And then you can start encouraging them via text as well. So, everybody has their phone in their hand. It's a very convenient and easy way to communicate. So a campaign like this can include various fundraising components, such as one-time donations. Something that's gaining a lot of traction now is the monthly recurring donations. And even like Diane mentioned, a silent auction. So we'll kind of dig into those later on in this webinar. But the important thing to know about this type of campaign is that it can be really as long or as short as you want it to be. That's kind of the beauty of it. No one knows your constituents the way that you do. So maybe that a lot of your people don't check their emails every week. So maybe you want to run a little longer one to give them a little extra time to get on there and check it and be able to get onto your event. Or maybe you think that a week is too long and you only want to run it for a few days. Our traditional recommended method is for a week, but however, like I said, what's going to work for you, and you have that flexibility to run it as long or as short as you want to. So the other nice thing is that this has the potential to reach even more donors than what you typically would in a face-to-face environment. So it might not be convenient for everyone to meet at one place, but this way they can do it at their convenience on their own time. Maybe after the kids go to bed, they get on there at night, they can take a look, whatever works for them. So it's just a much more convenient platform. It also provides your donors the opportunity to share this campaign with their family and friends. Like we mentioned, they have those social media buttons on there. they're able to both share the entire campaign site, or if there's like certain items on there that are really exciting and interesting, you can even share direct links just for those, interesting items to kind of pull in extra participation and encourage donors to get on there. So with this ability to easily share, on social media, one of the really cool and unique ways that we have seen this being used on this type of event is to promote virtual spirit weeks for your school. So everyone knows what the traditional spirit week is. Being housed in the school environment, each day is a different theme, different dress up days and that kind of stuff. Well, it works the same way virtually. So each day, again, you would pick a theme, a popular one being Dr. Seuss Day. And the fun thing is that, for the e-learning that day, the kids dress up in costume and the teachers do too. And it just kind of like brings that fun element that they're missing from being at the school, to their e-learning platform. Part of it that's nice too, if you want to pull in those fundraising components into this that we've seen, you can even have themed raffle baskets to go along with that for that day. And you can pull the winners directly on the site. You can communicate to those winners directly through the site via email or text. So it's just a fun and cool way to just, raise awareness of your campaign sites. And if you've already got a contract or whatever, then it's just a different way to use it. It's just a fun and interesting way to use it that we've seen. And, it never ceases to amaze me at, when we look at these sites, that the creativity that we see our organizations, using the sites for. I mean, really the possibilities are endless and you're only limited by your own imagination. So I'm going to turn it over now to Diane so she can kind of walk us through what this new current trending option is, which is that live virtual event.
Thanks, Kirsten. I mean, it really is an interesting trend that we're seeing just in the last month or so. While, again, not new, it's very popular, and that's that live virtual event. So everything that Kirsten just talked about, all those components, right? You can still have that extended virtual campaign, but you can bring in an exciting live stream or social media element over a shorter period of time within that greater campaign. And we're seeing huge success with this model. So let's say, for instance, that overall campaign could be for a week or two, but what if for 30 minutes or an hour or so, you can engage your, whether it's your parents, alumni, your local donors, and just engage them live. And schools in particular are really loving this option. We have a few examples for you in this webinar, and even some resources that we're going to send afterwards that you can tap into and see. But imagine having, whether you're the head of school or principal or whomever, live on screen through some kind of a streaming method, communicating the mission or the purpose of this campaign. And what if you are one of those organizations that was planning a live event already and have an auctioneer on hand, they're happy, trust me, to help facilitate this. They can help you by getting folks excited about a very specific donation campaign, even a quick auction or raffle and all that. So it's really quite exciting. And so we've heard of organizations using, whether it's GoToWebinar or even Zoom meetings, Facebook Live, YouTube Live. I mean, all kinds of possibilities with that. We even have a sister company with a live streaming solution. And what's kind of fun with our product is you can have that live streaming right on your homepage as you go through the fundraising component. But it really is, it's super exciting. And an event like this would allow you to really, I think, most closely replicate the emotional appeal of a face-to-face event, as well as maintaining this great sense of community. So, having the ability to utilize a live donation display with your goal is going to keep the momentum going. And we've even heard of schools putting like recorded performances for students or even student stories, all kinds of videos and recordings. So really fun there. So Kirsten, I know it can feel like our best connections are made in person, but why don't we talk a little bit about how people are still engaging when they're outside of that big, event room?
Yeah, of course, Diane. GiveSmart is great because it gives you the ability to, pull in those donors very easily. The number one thing that you can do as an organization is to just make sure that you have that, heartstring pulling story ready to be shared. And things to think about when you're building that story. Think about what it is you want to be fundraising for. Are you fundraising for technology or scholarships, sporting equipment? I mean, any of it's possible. And then when you're using the platform, you can allow those donors to respond to that story and to be able to contribute in so many different ways. So as you can see here on the screen, this is just one small example of one of the ways that your donors will be able to make an appeal for donations. As you can see, there's very clear options. The nice part is it's right at their fingertips. You can set up predetermined donation levels. You can even leave an open entry field there for them to choose their own amount that they feel comfortable giving. And one of the nice features here, if you look at the top on that screen, you see the toggle for one time or monthly. And something that, like we said, mentioned is gaining traction is just those monthly recurring donations, which honestly are pretty critical to organizations during this time.
Yeah, so definitely. Diane, do you have anything to add here?
What Kirsten just said is actually, and it's interesting, in the last couple of weeks in particular, we've been getting a lot of questions about the recurring giving feature that was just mentioned. And many schools and organizations are realizing that if they can get, whether it's, parents, alumni, and donors to give a little bit each month, that gives them the rolling fundraising revenue that's beneficial. I know I'm actually thinking, given all that's going on, if my daughter's high school, which by the way, she graduated 6 years ago, if they asked me for $10, $25 a month at this time, I would do it in a second, right? So if you guys are on that call, make sure you hit me up. But I think that recurring donation is a very trending type of fundraising right now.
Yeah, for sure. So now let's go to the technology and how it can help, because you do definitely have options when it comes to these different fundraising elements.
100%. So here's just kind of a summary slide of all the options that technology can allow you to do or use in order to, handle any kind of fundraising campaign, whether large or small. So we have all kinds of options and suggestions for you here today. The first thing, though, and probably the most important, is getting people to actually show up and participate in your fundraising campaign. That really is the most important piece. So everybody at home right now, parents busy, both working their jobs and helping their children with their learning, it really is a crazy home situation. So how do you get them in this next month or two before we hit the summer break? How do we get them engaged? So as Kirsten talked about, those email invites with the hyperlink right to the fundraising campaign, that's still a fantastic way. I think parents especially are used to schools communicating via email and looking for those types of correspondences. So still remains a great method. And then those of you that do rely on an alumni base for your fundraising, they too, great to reach out to them via email. But then what about those folks that might be alumni that you don't have their contact information, or local supporters of your school? That's where sometimes social media comes in, and even those parents. I saw something the other day, and I don't remember the number, but more folks, because they're working from home and spending more time at home, are spending more time on social media. So definitely utilize social media of the event or campaign and even specific items. And then if you have mobile numbers, and most schools do have at least the parents' mobile numbers, texting a link directly to the fundraising campaigns is by far one of the best ways to get them engaged in a fundraising campaign. So here's one of our first examples. I told you we have a number of school foundations that have done a fantastic job in the last month of shifting over to this virtual fundraising. So Soaring Our Foundation, they did a great job of encouraging not only their donors to participate in the social media, they used Instagram and Facebook a lot, but they even encouraged them to dress up. And you'll see there's, photos here of people sharing what their family looks like all dressed up for this fundraiser. And it loops in some of the fun and social aspects that come with, gathering together for actually a live event, getting dressed up, seeing friends. And you can encourage your participants to share photos. But I think in this particular case, they had some parents that jumped on a Zoom chat or FaceTime, and they were kind of talking through the whole fundraiser. So it was really a great social media experience for them. And we actually just did a customer success webinar with them and have that on our website. We'll make sure we send you that information so that you can learn more about what they did if you're interested.
Yeah, and here we have another one of our awesome organizations who had a great example of how to redirect that web traffic and donations. So our Huntington Christian School had their donation levels pre-set up on their site, as you can see over on the left. And what they did leading up to their event is they were able to drive traffic to their GiveSmart site via their school's main webpage. So luckily they were able to, their webpage they host their homeschool page on is on WordPress. And they were able to include a widget on their site. So each time a new user went to their school webpage, this widget would pop up. And instantly it draws your eye. And the more eyes that are drawn to it, translates to more traffic onto your site, and the more traffic translates into a higher potential for revenue. So moving on to this slide, we have, even more additional and fun things that we've seen people doing online are fundraising games. And one of our organizations incorporated a virtual wine pull and virtual raffles. The Soaring Our Foundation absolutely crushed it with their wine wall, their virtual wine wall. So this ended up being so successful, and so many people wanted to be a part of this that they ended up having to open up the additional sale of 40 more wine bottles, which thankfully their partners and sponsors at their local wine stores were more than happy to fulfill the orders. But this just goes to show that when you bring in those fun elements, it makes people want to get engaged. It makes people want to be a part of it. And the beauty of running these online virtual raffles is that, like we were saying, the sales can be either ongoing throughout the life of the campaign. So maybe you're, one of those hybrid, options. Maybe you're going to have a live virtual event. However, maybe you want to open up raffle sales to start garnering, gathering interest in your, upcoming event, and you can open up raffle sales a week ahead of time just to get people onto the site, registering, getting in there, and getting excited for it. So when you host these online raffles, the nice part is that winners can be texted, if they win. You can send out emails for winners. You can even host that live raffle drawing and bring that element of, having a little spinning wheel in your house and pulling a winner and announcing it right on there. But something, if you are going to do these online raffles, something to always just keep in mind is to be aware that there are some state and local raffle laws out there. So just be sure that if you're going to be doing this, that you're just abiding by those existing local, state, and raffle laws. Now we're going to kind of, switch over a little bit mentally to, I'm going to turn it over to Diane, where she's going to take us through one of the most challenging aspects to take virtual, and that's the live auction.
Thanks, Kirsten. At the beginning, the first couple of weeks when we had a lot of schools contacting us that, hey, we have a gala this weekend and we don't know what to do, and we've got these great live auction items, and what do we do? How do we bring this online? So you can use online bidding just like you would for a silent auction. So then those of you that have used any kind of mobile bidding technology in the past, you know how easy it is to place that bid right through your phone, right? So you can do that if you had like a live auction out there, but then draw some extra attention to those, what we would probably call premium or premier items now, right? Those were the ones that you were going to do as live. They're usually of higher value. And so what you could do is you could have your ongoing campaign of silent auction items for however long, a week, 2 weeks, however long you want to leave that open. But maybe you have these premium items that are just open for a short period of time, maybe 1 or 2 hours, and you really utilize social media or even live stream, that particular part of the fundraising to build enthusiasm and still hold on to that sense of community that's so important with the schools. And so if you contracted with an auctioneer, keep them around for this too, because it's really, really a big part of the excitement in that. You can send text messages throughout. So through our technology, very easy to say, hey, the premium items are now open, bid now. And here's the really great thing for those of you on the call. Schools have a very, very unique ability to auction off basically no cost items for huge huge dollars. I mean, we've seen parking spaces at high schools go for thousands and thousands of dollars, and front row seats at graduation the same, or even like a premier. There was a preschool one time sold a premier parent pickup spot by the month. So they sold, 7 of them, I think, was their school year around for big dollars. So, Kirsten, I know you've seen a lot of these getting big dollars out there. What have you seen?
Yeah, absolutely, Diane. Like I said, school, like you already mentioned, schools are in that unique position where they already have these built-in, $0 high value items that they just might not even be aware of. So you already mentioned, as you see here on the pictures, you've got your reserve parking, you got your graduation packages. How easy is it to just throw a reserve sign on a few seats for graduation and give someone that peace of mind? I mean, people are going to pay top dollar for that. Other unique, high dollar revenue items that we've seen are even just reserved seats and packages for school musicals and school plays. I mean, really any event that you have going on at your school, if you say you're going to reserve a seat for somebody, they're going to shell out the bucks to have that seat. One of the ones, even my child loved this one, is being able to do principal for the day or PE teacher for the day. I mean, offering those unique, experiences that parents are going to shell out top dollar for their kid to be able to experience that unique thing. My son is a great example. He was PE teacher for the day 2 years ago. And you would have thought it was yesterday because he still talks about it. And it was the highlight of his elementary career, at the school that he's at today. So, any of those things, it costs you nothing. And everything that you make off of that goes right into the pocket. So for older kids, you got high school level kids, interesting things that we've been seeing are if you have any successful alumni from your school and they are open to they still live in the area, obviously that would be better. But if they're successful and they're open to a job shadow day, that's invaluable information that those kids could learn by going and being able to do a job shadow behind them and, learn the ins and outs of what it takes to be successful and learn the ins and outs of how it is to run a, successful business. So, and that's information that's, invaluable. They carry on for the rest of their lives. Now the golden goose, of course, item comes from, if one of your constituents or one of your parents have a vacation home. This doesn't always apply, but you know what? It never hurts to ask. If they have a vacation home that they're willing to allow people to stay out for a week or a weekend, it's astronomical how much those will go for. And again, it's another thing that costs you nothing that is a great high value item. So now that we've talked about some of these premier items, let's move over and see how some of these virtual live events have been successfully implemented.
Yeah, like I mentioned at the top of the call, we have a few different examples of schools that, and it's so interesting because the school fundraising, it is a unique scenario because parents and alumni love their schools, right? Especially if you're an independent school or a private school, those parents are paying big dollars, for their kids to attend, and they're passionate about it. And so the fundraising is just another element of passion for the community of the school. And I know this is unique to some schools, but there's some that even have an amazing kind of community support, or depending on the type of school that maybe they have, my daughter went to a fine arts school, so the fine arts community was supporting the school in many ways too. So it was really good that, it's really good that there's still folks out there giving, and they're giving a lot. And this is one example, Corpus Christi School, and again, we'll provide you with a resource to this. In California, they pivoted to a virtual event really, really quick and put together this YouTube live stream for their vol, and they generated over $80,000 from their auction alone by shifting to those premium items like we talked about. So it was really, really fantastic. And you can even do it with a donation appeal. Again, so next slide here, you'll see this is an auctioneer in the great state of Washington, and he allowed us to use a screenshot where he was doing just recently a virtual demo of a virtual event, and showed how live streaming could work with a donation appeal. And so you absolutely can still do all of this, gather donations from the community, and from alumni and even those parents that can do so. But let's talk a little more about the silent auction, Kirsten, because I know, that's one of the things that you mentioned, the schools that got caught off guard with having already items collected, and gee, what do we do?
Yeah, if people are like me and you were the one responsible for collecting items for your silent auction or your raffle, and now you've got a whole room in your house dedicated where these items are just collecting dust and reaching the certificates, reaching expiration dates, etc. Do yourself a favor. Host a virtual silent auction event. Bringing in some money is better than bringing in no money. It would just there's an appreciation for how much time and effort it takes to garner those items and to make them pretty, and to have them just sitting there doing nothing is hard. So don't let all that effort and go by the wayside. Once you've made the decision to go and host a virtual silent auction event, some of the things to consider are, communicate how those items are going to be delivered. Are they going to be delivered, or are you going to allow pickup? People want to know, I purchased my item, now how do I get it? If you're going to offer shipping for all your items, you could easily just build that right into the opening bid price. If you're going to offer a hybrid where you have some items available for pickup and some items available for shipping, you could even just create an instant item for those that need to have that shipping price added to their total cost. So all of this information can very easily be added right on your auctions homepage. Because once you give the bidders that information at their fingertips and at their disposal, hopefully what that does is then alleviate them having to come to you with all their questions, because you've already provided it right there and it's easy to find. Another thing that you might have noticed on this slide here is that we're able to build in our sponsors, like highlight some of our sponsors, because sponsors are the bread and butter a lot of times to a lot of our organizations, and we want to make sure that they're getting the love and respect that they need, for helping us and supporting us during these times. So one way to highlight them, as you see here, is to have them intermittent throughout our item stages. And then you can also highlight them again and give them recognition on the homepage itself.
Yeah, this is fantastic, Kirsten. So now let's shift gears for a moment and talk about the communication that happens after an event, right? Like whether it's live or virtual. So what do you suggest here?
Yeah, so people spend, so much time as you need, in the planning and the pre-planning and getting those donors engaged. Whether that's like you said, it doesn't matter if it's virtual or in person, but you get them engaged through bidding and donating and purchasing, etc. And then the event comes to an end, and then what? Where do you go from there? And you want to make sure that your event ends as successfully as it began. So having those post communications are key and critical to making sure that your donors feel the appreciation and everything, at the end of the event as much as they felt appreciated during the event. So, number one communication that's always easy to send out, because everybody likes to hear a thank you, is thank your donors. Your event was successful because they contributed and they participated, and we want to thank them for that. We want to give them the acknowledgement that they deserve for partaking and being a part of it. Another thing that people like to hear about is let them know how much they helped you raise. What are those dollars that they were able to contribute? How is that going to help your organization? What is that going to allow you to be able to do? People like to know that information, so it's good to just those are nice, easy things to communicate that you can send out post event. Give a shout out, like we said, to those sponsors again. They were critical in providing you with the funds that you needed to get this going. So make sure that they, we continue to recognize them even after the event's over. And like I mentioned before, get that redemption instructions out there. Like I said, people want to know that people bought something and now they want to know how they can get it. So just make sure to inform them. Make sure it's out there, either built into the item descriptions or on your homepage. Even send out a wrap-up email to everybody that won something. But just that just alleviates and takes that burden off of yourself of having to answer all those questions. So make it out there, make it visible, and it's just going to make your life that much easier. One of the things that I would be remiss that we have on the platform, and then if I didn't mention, is that on top of the fact that GiveSmart has emailing and texting capabilities, which allow you to pull in and deliver great information to your donors, is at the end of all that, we also have a way to generate a receipt for tax purposes. And what this does is that pulls in, all those fair market values that you put into the system, and the purchase price and everything else. And it gives a very clear, definition of exactly what they can write off for tax purposes next year.
Whoops, it helps if I was not on mute. Okay, this is all really great. And one other thing we want to touch on for everyone to remember is that outside of major fundraising campaigns or your gala or a 5K, any event like that, there are opportunities to engage your donors, year round, and having the technology to support that is working well for so many schools to accomplish that. And so this is from a recent study that Community Brands did, and we learned that donors are willing to give 4 to 10 times a year to organizations that they support. So interestingly, they prefer to give via technology in some shape or form. So given the current situation, giving by text or online is actually preferred anyway. So don't be worried about asking now with a virtual event or donation campaign, and then again in a month or two. So Diane, what are some unique ways that we're seeing schools raising funds year round?
Kelsey, besides the Fun Spirit Week idea that Kirsten mentioned already, that a number of schools are incorporating this virtual Spirit Week, because they're trying to keep their students and parents engaged in this interesting time, right? So they're already kind of utilizing our platform for that. But then there's other ways that, we, of course, there's this unknowing and not knowing what's going to happen come the fall. But if we make the assumption that we're all going to be back in brick and mortar buildings, there were things like reservations or sales for events, or monthly raffles, voting campaigns for some of the, like voting for a fun theme or merchandise sales. Flash auctions are always kind of fun for various reasons throughout the year, like the principal for the day and that kind of thing. But just a lot of ways, even when I know that there were some schools that were caught a little bit in this scenario with the virtual education, where there were some students that didn't have iPads and that type of thing. And so they reached out to the greater community, and they were able to utilize technology to get some iPads donated, and even money donated to get some students some iPads. So, musical instruments, anything. There's all kinds of ways we can use that throughout the year. And here's the thing. Now more than ever, we just need to be creative in how we raise funds if it's definitely needed. And the magic combo we talk about often is kind of just hyping up the opportunity to give, because donors are being incredibly generous right now. Telling your story and just make that appeal. And then, of course, if you have some sponsors out there, showcasing your sponsors. So that's kind of a magic combo that we see working out there for all nonprofits as well as schools these days.
Great, thanks, Diane. And so just to wrap up with some of the key points before we jump into Q&A, just to remember that you have got this. Everyone out there is working hard, and you can do it. And the second is that pivoting to a virtual event with these resources, such as online fundraising software, being able to communicate through text and email, connecting over social media to create that virtual community, and the option to have a live stream if you want to have one of the more emotionally appealing moments that Diane mentioned earlier, like a live auction or your fund to need over the live stream. There are also ways that you can continue to consider these all year round, not just necessarily now in a moment where we need to be virtual, but something you could even apply, 6 months from now, 12 months from now. And then remember that you're compelling stories. Each school has their own story to tell and their own unique students, and remember to continue to share that as well. And so we are going to jump into Q&A. We've had a lot of questions come through, which is great. Keep sending them to us if you haven't already submitted them into the chat. And so the first question is, for I think probably better for Diane. So Diane, what happens in communities where parents are furloughed or even lost jobs due to the pandemic? Is it heartless to have a fundraiser or auction in this situation?
Yeah, that is an interesting thing that's going on. So we've had a number of schools that are in that same situation, and what they've done is they've reached out to the greater community. You're right. If the parents of the community, the school community, are in that situation where they're not in a place to give, then that's when we need to reach out to our alumni and our community supporters. So there are still some folks out there that even in that scenario, and it tends to be there's some specific communities, right, where that's happening. Some schools have made that decision to just say, we are not going to fundraise at this time. And then there's others that say, no, you know what, we're going to continue to do it, and just have the expectation that we're not going to expect much from the parents, but perhaps we can from our alum and our local community.
Yeah,
I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, totally fair. Yeah, I think so. Next question is, we have no prizes, no auction items, and cannot call local places now to start asking for donations or sponsorships. Any ideas? We're supposed to do a duck race, but first we would need prizes.
Yeah, and I'm going to jump on this too, because I think the number one school items we see out there are the ones that don't cost a penny at all. And I know we talked a bit about these, are the ones that you can just create, whether it is principal for a day, PE teacher for a day, if it's a parking spot, those kinds of things. Because you're right. Right now, reaching out into the community is an interesting time. We did, however, recently, we had a school that said that they were having great luck with their this was a more independent school that had folks that owned businesses as alumni, right? So they had graduated and they went off, and now they have their own businesses. And so they used their alumni network as a great resource to collect some recent items. So I think we talk about this a lot outside of the school sector, but just in the nonprofit sector in general, that, they often have to work with their board and just their connections to get donated items. Sometimes local businesses are not as generous, with the non-school nonprofit partners, and so working your network to get some items. But you guys have some of these unique no-cost items right at your fingertips if you can think of a few for your school.
Yeah, I'll jump in there too, Diane. Some other fun things, for the kids is we've actually seen people doing, selling. It's kind of like a virtual play date. Or a virtual fun activity between the teacher and a student, those types of things, just all held via Zoom. And there was another one that another one that has come up recently was maybe your principal is still sending out electronic messages and that kind of stuff, and allowing a kid to be able to read those messages. Maybe it's to make the birthday announcements for that week, or that whatever it is, just something fun that normally would take place at the school, but now is having to take place virtually, are other, $0 items that can still be implemented at this time.
Great. Okay, so next question for either of you. For engagement, let's say we are on Zoom or Facebook Live, where would this easy donation screen be? At the bottom of the live screen, or should we have a link to donate and then users go to a separate site?
Yeah, so there's a couple options there. So what we've seen some organizations do is they're running their live stream through Facebook Live, YouTube Live, or Zoom, whatever. And what they're suggesting to their to the attendees is, hey, have that up on the screen, and then the donations are being made through their phone. And they kind of set it up as two separate methods. You're watching the live feed on screen on your computer, and your donations go through your phone. Now, the other thing that through our platform, we do have the ability to have that live feed or videos right on the homepage. And so the way you can organize the homepage is that live feed is on one panel, and either right above it or below it would be the place to make the donation. So it could be all on screen on a computer, but certainly we can. The method we're seeing most popular is I'm watching the screen, and then I'm making my donations through my phone.
Great. This is another question, Kirsten, probably about for you. So a question about posting live auction items in GiveSmart. Is your recommendation to use the silent auction type of item if we have a live streaming at the same time. Is there a limit? There's a limitation here in that it's a fixed bid increment, which doesn't necessarily work best. If this was a live event, the auctioneer would have more flexibility to help increase the bids to feel for the room. Any recommendations with respect to the best way to list live auction items for a virtual event? Let me know if you want me to.
Absolutely. That would kind of pull in where we're highlighting those premier items, and you're selling those for a certain amount of time. So it's sort of like in a live event, and those live auction items, they're only open for that certain amount of time whenever the auctioneer would be auctioning them off. So the way that they would work virtually, unless you're literally having people call out or text in on the chat, if you're running a Zoom, people could chat in and say, I want to bid $200 for that, I want to bid $300 for that, and then it would work like a live auction. However, what's been more common is that they're set up as silent auction items on the site. However, they're being highlighted during this, they're only open during this live time frame. So it's really up to you. If you're going to host Zoom, they could respond via chat, and you can set it up as a live auction item, and then it's entered by the admin. Or like I said, more commonly you're setting it up as a silent auction item, but that item is only open during that window of time that you're highlighting it.
Right. Okay, cool. That makes sense. So next one for Diane. What if my silent auction certificate is for a restaurant or a hotel, which is still closed for the foreseeable future, but the certificate does not expire for 12 months?
Yeah, I think anytime, whether it's in this interesting time or whenever you're hosting an auction, certainly put the restrictions in the description of that item. And certainly right now, a lot of folks are looking at, when does this expire? Because obviously I'm not looking to perhaps go to a hotel in the next month type of thing. So just by posting the expiration date seems to be working. We do see hotel packages and vacation packages actually selling. So it's not like there's been, they haven't stopped selling. I think everybody though is just asking the same question. When does this expire? Expecting that they're not going to utilize it until fall or next spring.
Right. Okay, the next question is for Kirsten. Do organizations sell tickets to these virtual events, or are they typically free?
Typically, we've been seeing that they're free, just because that's going to garner more people to the sites, and you're getting that, engagement and that kind of stuff. There are a smaller subset that are selling tickets, definitely not at the same price as you would see, for an in-person event, definitely at a discounted rate. However, if you had an event already scheduled and, this is a different type of logistic, but if you already had an event scheduled and you had sold in-person event tickets, we have options to, roll those into donations if they so choose and that kind of stuff. But to answer your short answer for your question, majority of events that we're seeing is free enrollment.
Now, I'd like to piggyback on that because there's been a number of folks recently that are talking about, I'm thinking about my fall event and what if it does have to also be virtual. And some people are getting really creative and saying they are going to sell tickets, and what they're going to do is they're going to send food and drinks, food and wine or what have you, or if it's a family event, food and beverage to the home in advance. And so they would still be selling a ticket and everybody's still getting some kind of a meal. One organization was talking about having a restaurant deliver the food. And so there's some really fun and creative ideas out there that could still benefit, have the benefits of ticket sales.
I like that idea, actually. Cool. So the next question for either of you, you both might have input on this, but the best platform to host a live auction or a live stream. So YouTube, Facebook, is there a step-by-step tutorial on how to begin this process?
I'll jump on that one. So the first thing to know with any live feed is that there is a delay, right? So that first week when everybody was kind of jumping to live feed, and some of the schools and even some of our own examples, they were going out there and they're doing these live feed and watching, asking for donations, and the thermometer wasn't going up, and they're like, what's going on? And then 30 seconds later, whoa, all of a sudden the donations start coming in. So the one thing to know is that there is, when you're doing any kind of live streaming, there's a bit of a delay. So you have to kind of plan for that. As far as a tutorial, I'll be honest with you. You know, I think a lot of people got really scrappy and figured it out, and suddenly there's all kinds of YouTube videos out there on how to do this. We do have a sister company within Community Brands that has a live streaming service that does allow you to add a kind of a staffing option, if you will, like support, help, that type of thing, if you're looking for something a little meatier than what you can get from a Facebook Live or a YouTube Live type of thing. But just know that it's now been around enough the past 4 or 5 weeks, these virtual events, that there's all kinds of, even auctioneers, a lot of the live auctioneers have embraced this place of virtual events. And so if you need help, most of them have figured out how they can help you host a live feed and virtual event.
Okay, great, thank you. So we have one more question, and the question is, and then we're gonna wrap it up, and for those of you that sent in questions that we didn't get to, don't worry, we will, I know there were a lot, so we will be following up with you individually. But the last question is, if an event is free, you mentioned earlier to have live drawings, how do folks pay, quote unquote, to be part of this drawing?
Yeah, so you know, maybe it's free to get onto the site, you know, to register on the campaign site and that kind of stuff. That part is free. However, when you have raffle baskets and have different raffles that you're selling on there, you know, you're actually setting them up as instant items. So them just visiting the site is what gets the free part. But then once they're on there and they can see what you have on there, then when they start purchasing these instant items, that's when they actually start paying, is when they want to actually acquire these you know, raffle items and tickets for them.
Okay, great. Well, thank you guys. So like I said, we will get to your questions individually if we didn't address it now. We have another webinar tomorrow if anyone is interested in joining, and the details and registration for that will be in the follow-up email, along with all of the resources that we cited today and the recording to this. And stay tuned also for our May webinar, which will be focused on donor communication. So thank you so much to Diane and Kirsten for joining us today, and thank you to all of you for taking the time. We are rooting for you, and best of luck, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.